Hello and welcome to Markets Forward, your go-to show where we aim to get you up to date with today's trading action and set you up for tomorrow. I'm Nigel, with me is Sudip. Hey Sudip, another session, we were down.
Down and out, and how? But there's just been no relenting by the bears at all. They've got the bulls right in the midst of things. And again, today, a lot of volatility, and the net result is another down day.
Well, we were in this buy on dips mode. I think now it's turned into sell the rise. Even today's trading session, we were up 80-90 points to kickstart trade. But if you bought the dips as well, it quickly got sold into. So you had to be very, very nimble-footed. That was the way that today's market action did pan out, because the bounces got sold into. The Nifty Bank, that was the underperformer. In the last 60 minutes, I'll tell you what, if you pull up the chart, it'll tell you the picture, that we were down 1,000 points. In a matter of minutes, we recovered to, the green, and then we fell another 1,000 points. We went home with a cut of around 1,000 points or odd. But the Nifty Bank, highest amount of exposure to FIs. When FI is selling, normally that index takes a knock. It's corrected very quickly from 54,000 all the way to around 50,500. ITC as well as the tech-related names, well, they held one end up because you had Mphasis, TCS, ITC, all of them managed to put on some weight in a market that was actually getting clobbered. So that was good news. That was the pocket actually to hide. But mid-caps and small caps, well, both of them took a hard knock yet again. Both those two indices going home with sharp cuts. So it'll be just one thing that I'd like to say is that we have seen numerous sessions that we see a downtick. And I was pulling out some data as well. Normally, when the markets correct 5% in a single week, the following, the next 30 days actually are good for the markets.
Yeah.
That was what was there in the past. Now we're in very, very different times because, you have geopolitical issues that come back onto the table. The global index is in a, global equity markets in a bit of a funk. So we'll have to see how that goes. But 24,700 held out today. That's a glimmer of hope for me from a bullish perspective.
No, absolutely. And actually, when we came in, we had very decent cues because you had a great jobs report from Wall Street, positive close over there, markets positive in Asia as well. But none of that helped our case. And by the way, on the mid-cap selling, mid-cap, small-cap selling, look at the extent of the advance decline ratio. For every one stock that was advancing, there were over 8 stocks, that were declining. That was the pace of the fall on the mid-cap and the small-cap arena. Look at the gap between those lines and not even an attempt at a recovery. On the global point, one more thing to keep in mind is that these West Asia headlines are keeping the market very nervous because as we were closing out in the last 1 hour, massive move on crude oil prices. Crude has rallied 9% last week. We started this week with a very flat move on oil, a bit of a cool down in fact, but all of that changed intraday. And as we were closing out, crude was rallying between 2 to 2.5%. So we need to watch, of course, this equation very, very carefully as well. It's a packed show and a packed lineup. So let's tell you what we're covering today, all the movers and shakers and the stock-specific action coming up with Hormaz in just a bit. The key sector of the day was banking with all of the Q2 updates coming through. So we'll tell you more about that. Some stocks in focus included LTIMindtree, Mphasis and Ola Electric. And we'll get to all of that action in just a bit. And then, of course, Nimesh joins in, talks about the chatter in dealing rooms, considering this fall has been continuing absolutely relentlessly. And then, of course, we'll talk about some of the critical events to watch tomorrow. Let's get started straight away. Hormaz, the movers and shakers on another red day. Vivek actually is joining, and he has the movers and shakers on what was once again a pretty difficult day for the bulls.
Well, that's right. Day to forget as far as the bulls were concerned. Quite a bit of a beating, quite a bit of a pounding is what you saw. It was very tough to find stocks that were actually doing quite well in the session. But quite, some did stand out. Amongst the list of gainers, like you mentioned at the start, the IT pack did stand out today. The IT pack saw a bit of defensive buying, a couple of upgrades coming in, within IT names that have some BFSI exposure. LTIMindtree up 2% on the back of the JP Morgan upgrade. Finolex Cables, this particular stock stood out in the session today. Amongst the broad end of the market, saw quite a bit of selling pressure, but actually there was some amount of strength at the start of the session. ITC or the other stock that actually stood out today, again, some support coming in this particular name. The demerger of the hotel business, something that gave some support over here. And M&M, especially in the last hour, did see some amount of buying come in. So M&M also managed to close in the green today. But amongst the broader end of the market, especially amongst the laggards today, look at the entire PSU pack. The PSU pack, look at names like NTPC, SBI, Powergrid, ONGC. All of these stocks took quite a bit of a pounding today. Private banks, also saw quite a bit of selling pressure. It was very volatile, but most of the private sector banks, even the ones that gave decent business updates, all of them ended with significant cuts. Federal Bank, actually opened in the green, ended low by almost 5%. NBFCs, it was the other sector of the market that saw quite a bit of a sell-off, especially names like REC, PFC, almost 5% low on these names. The housing finance companies, gold finance companies, all of them took quite a bit of a knock in the session today. The fourth stock, as far as the losing pack was concerned, was actually Voltas. Voltas has seen quite a bit of selling pressure, especially in the last 3 to 4 trading sessions, almost 10% lower from the recent highs. Amongst the top blackouts as far as the FNO space was concerned. And Gujarat State Petronet, after a while, this particular name, there was a Motilal Oswal downgrade on this particular name. The stock lower quite significantly, almost 4% in the session today.
Thanks, Vivek, for that neat wrap on all those stocks that were moving around. Well, let's welcome our guest. We have Sudip Bandyopadhyay, Group Chairman at Inditrade Capital, and Ruchit Jain, Lead Researcher at 5paisa.com. Hi, Sudip. Hi, Ruchit. Thanks a lot for joining in on the show. Ruchit, you tell us, where does support come in at? We have broken the 20 DMA quite decisively. The 50 DMA is gone as well. But the glimmer of hope is the 24,700 mark held out at least today. What are the levels you're looking at, both on the Nifty as well as the Nifty Bank, on support levels?
Yeah, hi, very good afternoon, Nigel. Very good afternoon to everyone. Well, Nigel, if we see last 1 week, this market correction has mainly been due to FIS selling. We started the October series with a long-short ratio of 81% by FIS and about 3,70,000 or 3,60,000 contracts on the net on the long side. Now, last 1 week, they have continuously been selling the index futures and also unwinding the long positions. And their long-short ratio as on Friday was at 58% with about 83 contracts on the net long side. So I think this needs to reduce a bit, and once their long-short ratio comes around 50%, where they would not have any significant net longs, then I think markets would start again rebounding. Technically, 24,500 to 24,700 is a good support range, and also the RSI readings on the lower time frame are in oversold zone now. So I think from here on, at least a bounce back move, a pullback move from this 24,700 to 24,500 zone should be seen tomorrow in case if the markets opens negative and we get again Nifty in that range. I think that would be a good range to take some contra trades over there. If not for a resumption of the uptrend, then at least for a pullback move towards 25,200 to 25,300.
Got it. Okay, all right, Ruchit. Thanks for that. Well, let's move to the sector of the day. It was the banking space. AU Small Finance Bank stood out with a gain of around 1.5% to 2% in a falling market. AU Small Finance has reported strong deposit growth in its update. However, Federal Bank IndusInd Bank, both of them were lower. Abhishek joins us to analyze those numbers for us. Abhishek, take it away.
Well, to begin with, AU Small Finance Bank, it seems that the deposit growth that they have had has been liked by the street. So strong deposit momentum over there. We cannot compare the YOY numbers due to the merger of Fincare Small Finance Bank. So on a sequential basis, the deposit growth is more than 12% quarter on quarter. CASA in absolute value has grown by 10% quarter on quarter, but as a ratio, it's declined by 60 basis points. Advances growth is healthy at more than 5% on a sequential basis. Federal Bank, the weakest deposit growth that you are seeing for Federal Bank in last almost 2 years. So on a YOY basis, the deposit growth is 15.6%, which is the lowest in last 7 quarters. And on a sequential basis, it's at just 1.1%, which is perhaps the lowest in last 9 quarters. CASA ratio has improved on a sequential basis. This is for the first time that in 9 quarters, they have seen improvement in the CASA ratio. In terms of certificate of deposits, that's up 20% YOY and more than 11% quarter on quarter. This could put the pressure on net interest margin given the fact that cost of funds may rise. Advances growth was at 19.3% YOY and 4.3% quarter on quarter. This is the weakest growth that you are seeing in last 3 quarters for Federal Bank. Credit deposit ratio is at 27 quarter high of almost 87% versus 84% in the previous quarter. In terms of IndusInd Bank, the CASA ratio is perhaps at an 8-year low, that is 33 quarter low and 10 quarter low loan growth on a YOY basis that they have reported. So deposits are up 14.7% YOY and about 3.5% sequentially. CASA ratio continues to decline, one of the lowest in last 33 quarters, coming in below 36% mark at 35.9%. Retail deposits have grown by 4.3% quarter on quarter. Their overall loan growth is at just 13.2% YOY and 2.5% quarter on quarter. So credit deposit ratio is at 6 quarter low of 86.5%. Back to you.
Okay, all right, got that. Thanks very much, Abhishek, for the updates over there. Let's welcome in Sudip Bandyopadhyay into the conversation as well. Sudip, what a day for the market, right? And then you had all these banking updates come in, BFSI updates. Most stocks reacted negatively. AU was a bit of an exception. What do you make of the overall setup? And right now in the bank updates, what thoughts? I mean, anything that will make you either clearly buy or sell looking at the business momentum?
Well, I think definitely, there is a bit of a challenge as far as deposit growth is concerned, because some of these banks have gone ahead and taken, bulk deposits, which are obviously a little high cost. The credit growth also is kind of not kept pace. So, while the banks were trying to correct the problem in the credit deposit ratio, now the issue is moving towards the other end of the spectrum, and again that's a problem. So balancing this is very, very critical, and some of the banks probably will be able to do that, and somebody who is able to do that will be the winner in the new scenario. We'll have to keep waiting and watching. I strongly believe that the leading private sector banks are best positioned to kind of handle this well, considering the deep network they have and the relationships they have. So I will be very keenly watching out for ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank. There are, of course, challenges in the overall market, but BFSI, we continue to still remain positive. Also on the back of the fact that valuation-wise, they never went up like most other sectors.
Got it. Okay, all right, Sudip, thanks for that. Well, another bright spot in the broader markets was CG Power because of a corporate development over the weekend. Vamakshi joins us to explain that to us. Vamakshi, they're pouring into the right spaces.
Well, absolutely, Nigel, and that is one of the reasons why the stock in an otherwise weak market was up 5% or so. CG Power announced that they will be acquiring the radio frequency components business of Renesas Electric Corporation, and this is for a consideration of $36 million or somewhere around 303 odd crores. Now, keep in mind that RF components biz revenue for 2023 stood at $56 million or 471 crores, which puts the deal at a valuation that is a price to sales ratio of almost 0.65 times. CG Power will be acquiring the intellectual property, tangible assets and select transferring employees. This in turn will enable the company to enter the semiconductor design business. Now keep in mind that CG Power had received a nod from the cabinet for setting up an OSAT facility back in Feb 2024 with Renesas Electronics as well as Star Micro Electronics. So therefore, this is a step in the right direction, and resultantly the stock was up in the trading session today.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Vamakshi. Well, a couple of tech-related names, they were enthused by the report that came out in today's trading session from JP Morgan. Nimesh joins us to run us through that special report. Nimesh?
Well, Nigel, a couple of stocks within the IT were in the limelight on the back of the JP Morgan note. So today they've upgraded two stocks, LTIMindtree to an overweight with a target price increase to 1,600. And they've also upgraded Mphasis to overweight with the target price of 3,400. Now, JP Morgan believes both these companies are going to be beneficiaries of the banking and financial services recovery, largely in the US market. And the commentary seems to be quite encouraging in the last couple of months. And there are signs now that, that there's going to be a pickup as well as far as the US BFSI is concerned. In fact, the Fed rate cut could drive recovering the mortgages for US banking and financial companies, which have been under pressure of late. And if that has to happen, there will be a sustained discretionary spends over the next 12 to 18 months. And that could be biggest beneficiaries for the likes of LTIMindtree as well as Mphasis, because both these companies have an BFSI exposure of close to 35 to 50%, and hence a big upgrade. They've raised the EPS estimates as well as the target multiples, and they've raised the target price as well on both LTIMindtree as well as on Mphasis today.
Okay, all right. So yeah, these were some stocks that managed a little bit of green in an otherwise sea of red, Nimesh. Speaking of which, what did you pick up? The sense on the fact that this is a sixth straight day of a fall and relentless mid-caps, small caps, nothing spared today.
Last week, the first day of the new week, and there was aggressive selling. What changed today was there was massive selling in the broader market stocks. The mid-cap index saw a big cut, and a lot of individual names were down 8-10%. So it looks like there was sell-off across the board from larger institutions today. In fact, even today, the feedback was that the buy-sell ratio is close to 1:2 on the sell side. Even the financials saw a lot of volatility in today's market. But while the index was finally ended nearly 2% lower, I understand there was some bit of buying interest in private bank stocks from larger institutions today. The market looks a little oversold, and so is the bank nifty. But needs to see, the two big triggers to watch out tomorrow would be one, the China reopening and the state election outcomes. That can have a big impact, at least in the short term, for Indian markets as well.
Okay, all right. Thanks for that, Nimesh. Well, let's get in our guests. Sudip, what do you make of CG Power? I recall the stock being 15, 20, 25 rupees odd. Many people were happy with the four-bagger, got out at 100 or at 200. Stock is 700 rupees today. and the positive news flow continues. Your take?
Absolutely, Nigel. I think this development is pretty interesting, and the valuation at which they are acquiring is also pretty reasonable. Less than one-time sale is a good deal. And overall, I think the entire business has been doing well. It's been a remarkable story of turnaround in Indian corporate, kind of a scenario. So I think while the valuation definitely at current level does look a little rich, but I think considering the growth potential, and if you are looking at a long-term investment, absolutely no problem even at current valuation.
Okay, all right. Ruchit, what about you? What do you like from tech? That's been the bright spot, right? You have the markets that are down and tech moving in its own direction. And after a while, the street is expecting positive results and positive commentary for the second half of this fiscal and then for FY26. On the charts, what's looking good?
So if you do some comparative analysis in the recent consolidation phase, then Coforge is one stock which has not corrected at all. So this clearly shows then when the other stocks within the sector is showing some bit of a corrective phase, this stock is standing out. So that relative outperformance during the corrective phase of the sector makes this one of the attractive names. So I think Coforge would stand out in case if the IT moves up, then we can expect good outperformance from this one.
All right, Sudip as well as Ruchit, appreciate you joining in on the show and helping us out with a call on the index as well as on the individual stocks that we discussed. Well, on that note, though, we'll take a snappy break. As we do that, let's get you some market opinion coming in from Gautam Shah. We'll be back with all the top market events you need to track.
If you look at the trading action of the last 7 days, what's really happened is that it's been an India-specific correction. Most other markets in the world, whether you look at US, Europe, or rest of Asia, actually have been quite well. So it's been a completely out-of-the-box kind of a decline for India. Overall basis, the market has got internally weak, and therefore the next few weeks will be challenging. I'm quite concerned about the mid caps and the small caps, to be honest. We put out our big picture report yesterday, wherein we put out so many pointers as to why we feel that mid caps and small caps could potentially be topping out for the near term. And I think they need a multi-month correction or a consolidation at least before things can get back on track. We've all discussed it in the last 1 month that based on narratives, stocks were doing well. Based on Excel sheets of the next 10 years, stocks were doing well. I think there is a reality check which is now coming up. And I think anything that is substandard in the mid caps and small caps will come under serious selling pressure. But the top quality, the top 50 names in mid caps and small caps, I think will stand out. But the chances of a 7 to 10% correction in the mid cap and small cap space looks quite likely given all that has happened in the last few months.
Welcome back. You're tuned into Markets Forward. Let's get straight to the big corporate voice now. Mr. B.K. Goenka, the chairman of Welspun World, expects the group's revenues to triple in the next 3 to around 5 years. In an exclusive conversation, he also spoke about the group's key focus areas and their capex plans. Let's hear him out.
We are very clear that we came out with a clear vision of 3G. The growth with governance,
right,
and with the green. When I say green, is sustainability. So we are very clear that how we can become 3x from here, and that growth is only possible when you have right governance and right kind of a sustainable effort across around you, whatever you're doing.
I mean, I'll press you a little bit on the governance as well as on the green aspect, later on. But tell us about growth. When you talk about going 3x, what should the group revenues look like? Currently, you are around 40,000 crores odd in terms of revenues, while the group market capitalization is roughly around 45,000 crores. So where does that number go in the next 2 years from here?
So market capitalization is the outcome of whatever we are doing. Let me talk about the the growth plans. We have very clear roadmap for next 3 to 5 years that how we can become from here to 3x.
Okay.
How we can become a 1 lakh crore group at the top
Revenues.
level revenues.
Yes.
And we have a plan for our Welspun Corp, where we have a DI pipe, we have a large diameter pipe, we have a expansion in Saudi, we have expansion in USA, we are doing expansion in India.
Right.
And plus, we have recently acquired last year was Syntex, which is a huge growth plan. And we all know that how the overall building material is, and Syntex is a well-known name in the country. I mean, when you talk of a storage tank or water tank, you say Syntex leke aayi.
Indeed.
So Syntex is a very well, it's a synonymous with water tank.
All right, that was Nigel at the Welspun facility in Gujarat. Before we wrap out, quick look ahead to some of the marquee events to keep an eye out on. Tomorrow, Vinny's here with the details. Vinny.
So yes, a lot of events that we're keeping an eye out on, but let's start with the China market because that is finally going to be opening after 1 week of holiday. They had the golden week break. So yes, Chinese market is key to watch out for in terms of a move. US trade data is also what we'll be keeping an eye out on the global front. Global earnings, let's keep an eye out on PepsiCo because that will be reporting its September quarter numbers. Other than that, on the domestic front, we're watching out for corporate actions. Vedanta, the board will be meeting to consider and approve the 4th interim dividend. So keep an eye out on that. As well as PowerMech projects is going to be meeting to discuss in terms of bonus record date. That's actually tomorrow, so keep an eye out on that. Domestic earnings, Transformer and Rectifiers India is reporting its numbers. So yes, a key watch on that in terms of a stock move. Other events are what we're keeping an eye out on. Haryana as well as Jammu Kashmir, the election results will be coming out tomorrow. So that is important. BYD eMax 7 India launch. Key in the auto space to keep an eye out on. And FOMC members are going to be meeting, and Bostic is also going to be speaking at some of the events. So keep an eye out on any important commentary that comes in from them.
All right, Vinny, in green, and that was some of the only green that we saw all through the day. But on that note, we'll have to wrap up on this edition of Markets Forward. We'll be back with more news and updates on the other side.